Hey, what's going on, gang? This is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the 47th episode of The Rolling Stone. The world is changing right in front of our eyes with the coronavirus actually being declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. A pandemic is even worse than an epidemic. A pandemic, by definition, is actually an epidemic that covers a wide amount of areas, okay, like an entire continent. And since now the coronavirus is in the New World, here in America, it's in Asia, it's in Europe, all of Italy has locked down. In case you didn't hear that, the entire country of Italy has basically pushed the pause button because of this. Okay, so yeah, the World Health Organization did the right thing by saying, hey, yeah, there's a pandemic going on, and this is going to change the world, probably, in ways that we can't even completely understand. On Twitter and, going through the news sources, people have been speculating, how is education going to change, right? How is personal fitness and health going to change? How is entertainment going to change, right? Because, people do not want to get into large congested areas. They want to interact with people as little as possible. And as the days go on, I think that sentiment is only going to get stronger and stronger. It's also brought into question ideas of government and, community and things like that, because we have seen people hoarding everything from hand sanitizers to bottled water, to toilet paper. All this has been happening. Everything has been kind of stripped away. It really brings to mind one of Camille Paglia's themes in her work, that civilization is very fragile and that it doesn't take much for it to start falling apart at the seams. I think that we're actually seeing this right in front of our eyes. But in case you were getting your hopes up, Nate's going to talk about the coronavirus, etc. We are, but we're going to be talking about a very specific thing about the coronavirus, and that is this growing sentiment on the left to actually link this to racism. Okay, it's one of those things that really has to be heard to be believed. Okay, but this is actually the new narrative. If you talk about the coronavirus in the wrong way, you are obviously a racist. It's another sign that you are just, racism floods the very blood of your body. So where did all of this start? Well, as with so many things anymore, it started on Twitter. Now, a few weeks ago, CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, had its annual powwow. And it was later discovered that someone who was at CPAC, okay, it was a prominent person there, and who had intimately interacted with people. And when I say intimate, I mean, he was in small groups with these people, he was shaking hands, he was face to face with these people, right? So they were breathing his air, etc., etc. That's what I mean by when I say, he had intimate interactions with these people. That's everything, okay? As far as we know, at least. So, at CPAC, there was this man, okay, who then tested positive for the coronavirus. So this has kind of sent people into a panic, because CPAC has not, as of this recording, they have not actually revealed the identity of the person. They're saying that it's because of personal privacy, right? So, Congressman Paul Gosar from Arizona said that he and 3 members of his senior staff were going to voluntarily go into quarantine because they had been in contact and in communion with this mysterious man at CPAC, right? So there was a good chance that this person had given them the coronavirus without him even knowing it, okay? So thus far, plain and simple, right? But in his tweet, Congressman Gosar said that, well, he described the coronavirus as the Wuhan virus. Okay, and I'll explain that in just a second. But he didn't refer to it as the coronavirus. He referred to it as the Wuhan virus. And in response to that, Chris Hayes of MSNBC replied that calling it the Wuhan virus, calling coronavirus the Wuhan virus, was quote-unquote astoundingly gross. Astoundingly gross. Okay, and this really started a domino effect. Another doctor on Twitter, well, Chris Hayes isn't a doctor, so a doctor, Eugene Gu, G-U, okay? He's a doctor who is very active on Twitter. He is also very, very active politically. He is one of the people who actually filed a suit against Donald Trump. 2017, 2018, actually blocked Eugene Gu on Twitter, right? So Gu couldn't follow him, couldn't read his posts. And Gu was part of the people who actually filed suit against Trump saying, hey, this abridges the First Amendment, etc. So he was one of those guys. So Eugene Gu said that only the ignorant and the racist among us would call it the Wuhan virus, okay? Just yesterday, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, one of the squad, she actually said on the floor of the House, okay, this wasn't on Twitter, this wasn't, on a talk show, this wasn't on a podcast or anything, on the floor of the House of Representatives, she reiterated this claim, calling it the Chinese coronavirus, calling it the Chinese virus, calling it the Wuhan virus, is the only reason why you would do that is because of racism. And then she actually said, this is why people are not going out to eat Chinese food. This is why people are actually, avoiding Chinese restaurants. It's all because of racism. They think that if you automatically come within 20 feet of a Chinese person, or, within 25 feet of, a crab ragoon or something, you're going to come down with the coronavirus. Right? She said that on the floor of the House of Representatives. And AOC, the leader of the squad, reiterated that in an Instagram live feed where she said, well, the reason why people aren't going out to eat at Chinese restaurants is because of racism. And it's racist because they think, again, that this virus came from China. That this virus, that there is some sort of a link between China, Chinese people, and the virus. So that's where we are. That's where we are. The World Health Organization has called this a pandemic. The mortality rate for the coronavirus is higher than influenza. Last I saw, 38,000 people from around the world had actually died from it. March Madness has been canceled because of this. Louisiana, as of this recording, has actually postponed its presidential primary because of it. Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders have suspended all large political gatherings and campaign events because of this virus. But the big news that the left and the cultural elites want us to know, that if you call it the wrong name, you're racist. That's the big takeaway. Now, there are so many things to say about this. Okay, so the first point that I have to mention is the same point that John Nolt pointed out on Breitbart News, where he said it is standard practice to call a disease, to call a virus, to cause any sort of malignancy or malady, okay, to refer to it, to name it, to call it from the place where it first appeared, where it originated, right? He gave some examples, okay? Lyme disease was named after the town of Lyme, Connecticut, where there was a huge outbreak of Lyme disease in 1975. West Nile virus, okay? What causes West Nile fever? Well, the Nile is in Africa because it originated over there in Africa. Legionnaire's disease is named that because the first notable outbreak killed off a bunch of legionnaires in attendance at an American Legion convention in 1976 in Philadelphia. Okay, so there are tons of examples of this happening, okay? And so the reason why people have called the coronavirus the Wuhan virus is because it originated in Wuhan, China, which is in the province of Hubei, okay? It's in central China. It's about 600 miles away from Shanghai, which is right on the coast of China. That's it. That is the only reason why people have referred to it as the Wuhan virus, because it originated in Wuhan, right? So it isn't racist to refer to it as the Wuhan virus or to refer to it as the Chinese coronavirus, because that's where it originated. And as Nolt also pointed out, okay, especially when people are getting upset for, you called it the Wuhan virus. Wuhan doesn't even refer to a specific, group of people. It's a town, right? It's a town in China, right? It's insane. And even better than that, okay, is this little nugget. The press, the media itself, has referred to the coronavirus as the Wuhan virus. Okay? They have referred to it as the Wuhan virus itself. One big example is back in January, Jim Acosta over at CNN, he specifically said the Wuhan virus in a tweet. Now, that tweet has, mysteriously gone underreported from everyone, right? And even better, there is a montage. There is a montage of people in the media actually referring to the coronavirus as the Wuhan virus. They're calling it the Wuhan virus. They're calling it the Wuhan coronavirus, etc., etc. So all of a sudden now, because a group of Republicans, this only started when Paul Gosar and Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, started calling it the Wuhan virus. Then all of a sudden, the rules changed. And all of a sudden, because they called it the Wuhan virus, all of a sudden, it was racist to call it that. That's what's going on. Well, that's what's changed it. So what's going on with all this? I think my instincts are telling me that two things are going on. The first thing is pure politics. Okay, this is Saul Alinsky's rule. One of his rules for radicals. Never let a crisis go to waste. This is what that looks like in action. Okay? And I've talked about this before. This is one way that the left and that progressives can control our minds, by making ordinary people think that systematic racism is still everywhere. Right? It's so prevalent, it's so predominant that calling a virus by the wrong name is actually a microaggression and a sign of inherent white racism against, whatever minority we're talking about at the time. Right? They make it seem like that. They make it seem like systematic racism is still so prevalent that all of a sudden you start policing yourself. Because, who wants to be called a racist? Who even wants to think of themselves as a racist? So, if they get people to think that racism is still everywhere, that you yourself harbor racist tendencies, it's that much easier to control your mind, to control your speech, to control your thoughts. That's what's going on there. Right? So that's one thing that's going on. But the second thing, it's a little bit off the beaten path. And this is just my personal instincts here, guys. But I think that this is also a reaction because people are scared. People like Ayanna Pressley, people like AOC, people like Chris Hayes, Jim Acosta, right? They are terrified. And why are they terrified? They're terrified because this coronavirus, this Wuhan virus, that's right, I said it, this Wuhan virus is completely undiscriminatory. It's kind of funny for all the times that the left talks about we can't be discriminatory, we can't be discriminatory, we can't be discriminatory. Here, in fact, is a disease that does not discriminate. The Wuhan virus, it doesn't care what your politics are, doesn't care who you voted for in the last election, doesn't care who you're going to vote for in the next election. It doesn't care what your job is. It doesn't care, how many followers you have on social media. It doesn't care what your social status is. It doesn't care what degree of woke you are. It doesn't care how intersectional you are. If you get it, you've got it, right? And if your immune system is compromised in any way, if you're not in the best of health, then all of a sudden your chances of surviving go way down. Okay? That's reality. This really is a cold dose of reality in our faces. That's what it is. Natural disasters do that. Wars used to do that until we got so insulated from them that we could really live out most of our lives without even knowing that wars were being fought, not even knowing that your own country is involved in a war. But pandemics still do that, because pandemics, they spread quickly and they can affect anyone. And especially with this Wuhan virus, with this coronavirus, where the incubation period is about 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks before you even know you have the virus. 2 weeks in which you innocently interact with dozens and dozens and dozens of people and can spread the virus to other people without even knowing that you're sick. That's what's terrifying them. And that's why they are clinging to this narrative, I think, because the entire one of the entire points of progressivism today is to control reality. Right? Call it Alice in Wonderland, and we can see this today. I mean, right here, saying, talking about microaggressions, right? Okay? Say, oh, you're an articulate person. Microaggression. Are you going to have a boy or a girl? Microaggression. Right? Hey, you're pretty good. You're assuming that someone who looks Asian is good at math. Microaggression. Even when you think you're giving someone a compliment, it's a microaggression. That is a way that they control reality. All of gender ideology is an attempt to control reality. This rewriting of history, like we've seen in the 1619 Project, that's controlling reality. Progressivism, in some way, shape, or form, is all about controlling not just the narrative, but controlling reality. Well, what happens when that control is just taken away from you, just mercilessly taken away from you? All of a sudden, you feel pretty vulnerable. You realize, again, that cold dash of water on your face, you realize that you are not in control, that there are things beyond your control, things that are immune to your paradigms, to your words, to your language, your 21st century magic spells. They are immune to your thought experiments and your academic speech. It's immune to all of that. It doesn't care who you are, what you think, where you come from, whether you're a man or a woman, how you identify, whatever. If you get it, you've got it. And that terrifies these people. When your entire ideology and sort of your entire sense of being rests on the idea that you control reality, when that control is taken away, you're terrified. And all of a sudden you want to get that back. You want to assure yourself that everything is normal. And you do that by latching down on what you know best, which is controlling reality. That's another reason why I think that so many people on the left are jumping on the bandwagon for this narrative, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. I mean, here we are in the middle of a global pandemic, which is already here in our country, and we're worried about what we call it. All of a sudden, what was not racist 2 weeks ago when Jim Acosta said it, all of a sudden now is problematic and a sign of systematic white racism. No, there's more to it than that. These people are operating out of fear, plus just, following Saul Alinsky's commandment to never let an opportunity go to waste, to, again, exert more control and cement their place as the Brahmin caste that will dictate what reality is to the rest of us. That is story number one.